Imagine being assured that you are receiving medical care, free exams, meals, perhaps even burial insurance, only to find out decades later that what you were promised was a lie, that the treatment you accepted was a front, and instead you were being watched, studied, while your life slowly unraveled. That was the grim reality for hundreds of men in rural Alabama, victims not of war or poverty, but of a callous experiment by their own government. The Tuskegee Syphilis study is not a distant medical anecdote. It is a dark warning that science can be twisted, ethics abandoned, and human lives sacrificed in the name of research. What follows is the story of that deception, how it unfolded over 40 years, and the legacy it left behind. The Tuskegee Syphilis study began in 1932 under the auspices of the United States Public Health Service, in partnership with the then Tuskegee Institute, now Tuskegee University, in Macon County, Alabama. The stated aim to document the natural history of untreated syphilis in African American men. At the start, researchers enrolled 600 poor, largely illiterate sharecroppers, 399 who already showed signs of syphilis, and 201 men without the disease, who served as control. In exchange for their participation, the men were promised free medical care, meals, and what was called burial insurance. But crucial facts were withheld. None were told they had syphilis. Instead, they were told they had bad blood, a local catch-all phrase for illnesses ranging from anemia to fatigue. They were never informed of the study's purpose, never asked for informed consent, and certainly never told their illness was curable. Originally planned to last perhaps 6 to 9 months, the study was extended indefinitely once funding for treatment was withdrawn. Not to treat, but to watch the disease run its course, even unto death. From early on, the study was built on deception. Participants weren't offered real treatment. Instead, they were given placebos or ineffective therapeutic procedures like spinal taps, misrepresented as special treatment, while true medicine was withheld. The horror deepened as time passed. By 1947, penicillin had become the accepted and effective cure for syphilis, yet researchers deliberately withheld it from the men in the Tuskegee study. Local doctors were reportedly told not to treat those men even if they came to them for care. As decades passed, many participants suffered, developing severe complications. Media group, archival photo of suffering. African American man in hospital bed, vintage image of patient with blindness or mental illness, 1940s patient with visible syphilis complications. Stocker distribute equally, blindness, mental illness, cardiovascular, neurological and other late-stage syphilis effects. Some died directly of syphilis, many more died of complications. Their wives and children, unaware of the risk, were often infected. When the experiment was exposed by a whistleblower and media reporting in 1972, the outrage was massive. The government terminated the study, but by then the damage had been done, and irreparable. The Tuskegee study is widely considered, arguably the most infamous biomedical research study in United States history. What made it so grotesque, beyond the medical neglect, was the racial context. The participants were poor black men living under Jim Crow segregation. A combination of systemic racism, poverty, lack of education, and social marginalization made them vulnerable to being used as subjects. The term bad blood played on ignorance, and the collusion of local institutions, including the Tuskegee Institute, local doctors and public health officials, created a veneer of trust, which patients placed, only to be betrayed. The consequences echo across decades. Many more Black Americans today remember Tuskegee as a history of deceit, exploitation, and medical racism. Trust in public health and government medicine remains deeply damaged in affected communities. Politically and institutionally, the fallout was historic. The revelations from Tuskegee led directly to stricter laws governing medical research. The National Research Act of 1974, the creation of the Office for Human Research Protections, and requirements for institutional review boards to supervise all human subject research. In 1997, Bill Clinton issued a formal apology to surviving victims and their families, acknowledging the shameful nature of what had been done. For those who study history or social dynamics, Tuskegee demonstrates how racism, institutional power, and social inequality can corrupt science, transforming medicine, meant to heal, into an instrument of harm. It forces us to examine not only the individuals involved, but the systemic structures that allowed the abuse to persist for 40 years. If you examine public health, medicine, or ethics, the case underscores why informed consent, transparency, and oversight in research are non-negotiable. It shows how vulnerable populations, poor, disenfranchised, marginalized, can be exploited under the guise of care. The frameworks created post-Tuskegee, institutional review boards, regulatory oversight, exist precisely to prevent repetition of such abuses. For documentary makers, educators, or social activists, Tuskegee remains a potent cautionary tale. It connects medical neglect with social injustice, racism with death, state power with individual suffering. It reveals the human cost behind data, behind subjects, behind research. That story remains vital, not just as history, but as a warning. Use it to prompt truth, accountability, and vigilance. For survivalists or global health-aware thinkers, remember that modern medicine is powerful, but only as ethical as its practitioners. In contexts of war, displacement, poverty, or crisis, monitoring, transparency, consent, and ethical oversight matter. The Tuskegee story may have happened in early to mid-20th century America, but its lessons apply in refugee camps, emergency clinics, remote health initiatives, and any situation where vulnerability meets authority. The Tuskegee Syphilis study was not a one-off tragedy. It was a calculated betrayal of trust, of human dignity, of responsibility, carried out in the name of science. It stands as a permanent scar on medical history, a constant reminder that science without ethics becomes horror. But in its aftermath, new protections were forged. Laws changed, oversight strengthened, medicine faced its own conscience. If you found this guide valuable, if you care about truth, history, human dignity, and the lessons of the past, make sure to subscribe for more deep-dive explorations into history's darker chapters. Share this with fellow historians, ethicists, documentary makers, and anyone who must never forget that sometimes survival depends not just on medicine, but on morality.